Folks, interest rates, mortgage rates are at a 20-year high. I am just curious, what does that mean for Mr. Jason Pritchard? He is a business owner, entrepreneur, landlord, Airbnb, all of this stuff, buying and selling. I got to ask, dude, higher rates, what's it doing to your business?
It has definitely had an impact on our business for sure. And I think the biggest thing and the most obvious one is that we have not been able to accumulate as many rentals as we have in the past because the numbers just don't cash flow. So, everything that we've bought has been utilizing the burst strategy. So we bought our first rental like the end of 2016. We accumulated 50 properties in the 3 years after that. We're about 100 right now. And all of that was buying cheap, adding value, refinancing, recycling that money out. And that process does not work as well when the rates on the DSCR loans we're getting and that we're looking at have an 8 in front of them now. You know what I mean? And so
they can have a 9 for some people.
Yeah. And so it's definitely not as easy to do it. That's where the biggest impact has been for us because the best thing that I've ever done is buy investment properties, bar none. Best decision that I've ever made. You can still make that work. And so I'm not saying that buying rentals is dead, but for us, that's been the biggest change for us because we do 80 deals a year. We would always keep a big chunk of those, right? Earlier on, it was a larger percentage, but I've never kept maybe less than 20 or 30% of those deals that were done. And this year, I think we've refinanced 1 duplex and I don't see anything on the horizon that's in our pipeline right now that we're really closely looking at keeping it as a rental property. So that's been the biggest impact so far.
Yeah. Finding cash flow deals at 8%, certainly much, much harder. Not impossible, but certainly much harder. I'm curious, has your private money said, hey, Jason, I need a little more love. I can get 5 or 6% in the treasury. Is anything on that?
I had somebody ask me that the other day too. And surprisingly, the answer has been no. And I think here's the reason why I think it is. One, it's the relationship and the track records that's there.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of my lenders have been with me for years. And I think I've done a very good job of doing exactly what I said I was going to do, paying them what I feel like is a very strong return on their money. I typically pay 10% interest and sometimes an origination fee, most of the times an origination fee to my lenders. And the profile of my lenders, I also think plays a big part. A lot of them are, I'll use the word mom and pop. They're not like institutional guys. They're not going and doing some type of credit arbitrage where they're borrowing against a line of credit and then trading that money back to me at a higher percent. So when they were using cheap lines of credit at 4 and 5, they were happy making 10. Now those are like 7, 8. So they're like, I need 12 or 13.
Right.
That's not the profile of the people that I'm borrowing from. The people that I'm borrowing from are family members, entrepreneurs, people that are retired, and they like having a secured rate of return that's collateralized against one of my projects. They know Jason is going to perform. You and I are hearing horror stories about all these fly-by-night people that are going to jail over this or that because they're making all these crazy promises and they're running all these schemes. And they know that I'm not going to do that. And so I think it's a fair trade. And for me, I have not had to adjust. I haven't not had to adjust my rates at all. So it's been good.
How has higher rates impacted what you're buying, right? Are your sellers, or maybe talk about your leads, do they understand that the market's different than it was last year? Or are people still stuck in, 2021?
This time last year was a difficult time for your direct to seller, conversations because everybody was still stuck in this frenzy that had kind of led up to that point 12 months ago, right? So sellers were not realistic about what the value of their properties were. And we were having these conversations about, guys, like this train has left the station and it's not coming back, right? And now I think the sellers have come back down to earth. They realize after a year of just seeing what's been going on with the market, what's going on with rates, them trying to sell their property and not getting the number that they wanted, that conversation has become a lot easier. And because we run a really good business on the acquisition side, we're constantly following up and talking to them. So some of these opportunities that came into our pipeline 12 months ago are just now converting. The new opportunities that are coming in are also easier to understand. Like, here's where the math is going to be on this, guys. This is why our offer is where it is. So that's been helpful. I think we're just having to adjust our expectation of what our resale value is going to be to a little bit more of a conservative number, right? And just really, really being in tune with what's going on in the markets that we're reselling, and specifically right there in those neighborhoods. So we're paying very close attention to active listings, pending listings, what more recently comparable solds look like, to really kind of keep our finger on the pulse of where we think that we can sell. We still have a big inventory problem, so that's good for us, especially in the ballpark that we operate, which is at or below the median. The one thing that's working in our favor is that there is just not a lot of stuff for sale. There is more demand in that price point than there is supply. So that's where we still feel good about operating right now. That's always been our sweet spot, and we're going to keep hammering right there.
And that was the last question, is like the buyers, right? Because your end product is a retail buyer most of the time.
Yep.
When you get to the closing table, how many times have you done seller credits or some type of concessions?
Much more common now.
Problems? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, much more common now. We just closed. This was one of the most problematic escrows that we've had in a very long time. We had it appraised short. We had a pretty substantial credit to the sellers. We had people on the buyer side that were just not fun to work with and made it feel like pulling teeth, right? And we're seeing a lot of those type of concessions happening more. And so we're having to price that stuff into our initial evaluation when we purchase. All of these data points, guys, we have to pay close attention to them. So every time you come off of a transaction like we just had right now that I was talking about, what can we learn? So then that way, when we're buying new properties, all that data has to come to our acquisitions team and say, hey, right, when we're buying right here in this area, don't just budget for this after repair value, minus take a little bit off to account for those credits, maybe an appraisal issue, that type of stuff. And then we're just constantly learning and creating this feedback loop. So then that way we know what's going on when we're making our offers.
Yeah, I guess I'll just close on this bigger thought. A lot of people look at higher rates and they all talk about demand, right? Because, affordability is terrible and all of that. What people don't realize is higher rates are just crushing supply.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to sell. It's like, why? I'm not moving, right? Because they're, the move up buyer is a buyer and a seller. They're like, nope, I'm staying put. Is that why there's no inventory below the median, at least in Fresno?
I think so, because this problem property that we had was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. I would call it in a B+ neighborhood. Definitely not at, we listed it originally at $499. We ended up selling for $475 with a credit back to the seller, right? That payment was $3,700. I mean, that's more than my house, dude. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's
like basically what my payment is. It is my payment, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I mean, we have like a nice house. So it's interesting looking at the difference in where we're at. Yeah. In price points, dude. So it's like, for us to be in the property that we're in and have a lower payment than that house that we just sold. And we bought our house 3 years ago. So it's just amazing. So yes, I think that trade up market is, I mean, unless you're in a life event where you have no other choice and we have to move, I think the only way it really makes sense to trade up from a market like Fresno is if you're going and relocating somewhere else where your dollar stretches a lot further. So that makes it a little bit more palatable to say, like, okay, I can stomach a 7% rate because my house is twice as big. And so you feel that, you feel like you're actually, trading into something better. But it's hard because right now, if you're just looking payment for payment, I don't even know you're making a lateral move. It might even be a step down depending on where you're going, right? And that kills that inventory because, I don't know, the statistics are every 5 to 7 years, something like that. People are buying a house.
7 years-ish.
All those people that bought 3-4 years ago should slowly be coming into that window. And unless they are forced to move, they're not moving. So, the people that can
trade
control
down,
inventory are going to be good. They
can't even be you can't be a baby boomer who's now an empty nester in the mansion and trade down. Your payment's going to go up.
What's the point? Yeah, I don't know. I don't even understand the point. So here, the thing that I've always said, and I'm going to say it again right now, is if you can get good at controlling where the deals come from and having a little bit of sense of, or having a little bit of control of that inventory, right? That gives you so much leverage in this business. So for our business, we are great at finding these opportunities. The inventory flows to us first. Then we get to decide what we want to wholesale, what we want to flip, what we want to keep as a rental property. It all starts there. And, that's one of the other things besides buying rental properties that I will pat myself on the back about is I got great at doing that very early on. And we've just continued to improve.
You've
And it's
never
been
stopped. You've never stopped.
It's one of the biggest competitive advantages that we have is that I'm not waiting around for people to bring me opportunities. We are controlling where deal flow comes. And if you want to have longevity in this business, I would invest in those skill sets and become great at that.
Jason, where can people find you?
The best place to find me is either my website, jasonpritchard.com, tons of free resources and things available like that. And then if you just want to follow along with the day-to-day stuff, all the cool things that we're doing in our business, Instagram or Facebook, just put my name in there, Jason Pritchard. I get tons of DMs from the One Rental at a Time community. I'd love to be a resource to you guys and answer your questions when I can.
Awesome. Thank you, buddy.